Alright, welcome to our web app. This is Game1Up. I'm Eric, and this is
Andrew.
The motivation behind our web app is that a lot of people are gifted board games. These board games end up collecting a lot of dust, not because of a lack of interest, but because they don't have enough players to play the game. Our web app will help connect players with other people with similar interests. This web app will be good for situations when you're moving into college or other events. We'll meet the GUI standards by trying to make our web app fast, efficient, and clean.
A brief overview of what we'll be presenting today is research for our project, the design behind it, why gathering feedback is important, diagramming our project, front-end implementation of our project, building the database, and then finally the back-end implementation. Some of the similar apps that we've found through our research are apps like Meetup, which connect people to different people in a general sense, so just anyone can put any sort of meetup up and then they can join it. Aleto is a little bit more specific and it's targeted towards college students getting together for athletic events like a pickup game or exercising. What we found is that having a specific audience for your app allows you to better tailor the app to your experience. Another example of something we found that's similar is a UML experience that we've all had.
So UMass Lowell now has a course catalog, and we want to borrow this course catalog to help design our feed. Basically, this course catalog has things such as a capacity, so you know how many people can be in this event, and how many are currently enrolled. It has something like if the event is open or closed, a location, a date, and a brief description of what it is. And basically this is all the aspects we want for our feed.
The last thing that we learned through research is the emphasis on using user location to categorize so that people can find events that are close to them. So that's something that we'll want to implement. The first step towards making our app is designing our app. We start with designing a wireframe. A wireframe is just a simple visual guide that shows the skeleton of the framework of our website. This will allow us to see the elements that we need and want, and let us reposition things before we start designing. After we have a functional wireframe, we'd want to switch to a high-fidelity prototype. This is a semi-functioning version of the website that isn't programmed, but you can see design aspects, images, colors, typography, and it's where the application will get its character. As you can see, the picture on the left-hand side is a wireframe compared to the completed version of the high-fidelity prototype on the right-hand side. You can see that the application kind of has a personality now, and that's something that we want to do.
Something we want to do is have an iterative design. So first, we will have to design it, get feedback, and then based on this feedback, we might want to make changes to make our application faster or better. So an example of how this can be used is once we design our prototype, we can send it to users and get feedback to adjust what we've made. For example, if the feed is too small to see.
Another important aspect towards making our application is creating the necessary diagrams to know what we're doing. A sequence diagram is going to show us what the flow of the data is going to be like, from user experience all the way down to what the back-end programming will be. A relational diagram will allow us to create a database before we actually make it so we can know what data we need. Use case diagrams will explain how we expect the user to interact with the website so we can build the website around that. All of these will help us better understand what the website is before we start it so that we'll have less questions down the way and things will go much more smoothly.
To start the front end process, first we're going to take our prototype and develop it into code. So we're going to design pages such as a sign-up page, a sign-in page, a feed page, and a user home profile page. And to do all this, we're first going to have to make dummy data. So we can have things like users having friends. So when you visit a profile page, you can see it based on if you're a friend or if you're just like a normal user. Another aspect we want to consider is making our website responsive. This means it has to work on a big screen such as a laptop and a small screen such as a smartphone. So after our front end is completed, we need to make the database, and this is where our dummy data will go. We'll have to include things like user data such as passwords and user information, and then we need to make relations such as a friends list. So based on your friends, they can see your games that you play and other game nights that you are attending.
Yeah.
We'll also need to create a database for the games themselves. So these games will have like the number of plays required to start the game, an image for the game, and then like maybe even rules and the title.
At this point in the process, we'll want to start making the backend. We'll already have the sequence diagram made, so we'll know generally what we want to do, but the backend should be able to handle user authentication, and we should have an API with endpoints to connect the front end to the database. Some of these endpoints will include getting a list of games, getting a list of friends, accessing the game's database with a certain query. We'll also want to tailor the experience to the user themselves. So as part of the user authentication, when a user logs in, they'll get information pertinent to themselves as opposed to general information. Here are some of the resources that we'll need. Figma is an application that will allow us to prototype our design. When we go to implement the front end, we'll be using React as a framework. The back end will be using Node.js and Express so that we can have endpoints to our API. The database will be using FaunaDB, which is a server-based database. And lastly, to host our website, it'll be on Netlify. Netlify lets you upload pages using a GitHub account and lets you run serverless functions so we can create our backend with AWS.
So this is our timeline. As you can see, we've already done our research, and by the time you're watching this, we'll have figured out the architecture for our web app. After that, we want to solidify our design, so we're going to decide what pages we are going to make and who has to make them. And after that process, we'll start the implementation and get it hosted online. And after that, we start the iterative process and we'll send out our website and get feedback on it. Then we will create the dummy data on the databases. After that, we implement the API, connect it to the front end, test the application, and launch. Simple.